Early voting is beginning in the critical state of Georgia, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are in a virtual tie in the latest Wall Street Journal poll. It's the first presidential election since the Republican legislature passed a controversial new set of voting laws. Nick Valencia is outside a polling site in Atlanta. Nick, looks like there are a lot of people behind you lined up.
That's right, Dana. First day of early voting, and yet we are still getting rulings from the Superior Court here that are going to have a direct impact on the 2024 election. Earlier this morning, Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney issuing one of two rulings related to certification that we've been waiting on. This one stemming from a lawsuit from Julie Adams. She's a conservative on the Fulton County Board of Elections who made news this past spring by refusing to certify the presidential primary results. But Judge McBurney sending a very clear message in his ruling that certification is mandatory under Georgia law, and this is what he said in part of that ruling. If election superintendents were, as plaintiff urges, free to play investigator, prosecutor, jury, and judge, and so, because of a unilateral determination of error or fraud, refuse to certify election results, Georgia voters would be silenced. Our Constitution and our election code do not allow for that to happen. I mentioned that other ruling that we're standing by for, that one stemming from a lawsuit from the Democrats over what they call the certification rule. And that one, Democrats fear, will give potentially a rogue county election official the chance to deny certification, which could cascade into bigger problems for the 2024 election. Behind me, though, you see that energy and enthusiasm among the voters just a short time ago. Gabe Sterling with the Secretary of State's office tweeting that there have been 122,049 voters who have checked in to early vote. We are well on our way to smash that record set in 2020 of 136,000 voters. And earlier, I caught up with one voter who this is their second time voting in a presidential election, and she talked to me about the process.
Last time I voted in the city, and the lines were out the door. They only had maybe 3 people working, and so people honestly just started leaving because it was this is too long. I can't sit here and wait. I have to go back to work. But here, no, it was easy. I just stood in line. The line was moving. They had 6 ballots in there, multiple people working. I had no issue this time.
There were concerns among Democrats that Trump operatives were working hard to create confusion around this election, but so far that has not impacted the enthusiasm that we're seeing today on the first day of early voting. Dana?
So nice to hear that people are voting, that voting is easy. I mean, this is definitely a good sign for democracy. Thank you so much for that, Nick. Appreciate it. Let's come back to the table here. And I want to ask you about not just this idea of early voting and what it means for just enthusiasm, if we can learn anything about that, but also just going back to this new law, new since the last presidential election. It was passed in 2021 in Georgia, and I just want to go through a couple of other points. It removes Georgia's Secretary of State as chair of the state elections board. Put a pin in that. Allows the state board to suspend and replace local election officials, fewer drop boxes, shorter absentee voting period, extra early voting days, allows unlimited challenges of voters on the rolls. So these new laws passed by the Republican legislature, signed into law by the Republican governor, there is a lot of concern among Democrats that this could, on the front end, make it harder for people to vote. So far, it doesn't look like that's happening. But on the back end, the question is about certification. And we all remember Brad Raffensperger. He, got a lot of pushback, shall we say, from Donald Trump and his allies for certifying the election. The law is different now, and they can take, and they will, and they have taken some of the final say away from Brad Raffensperger and given it to handpicked Republicans.
Well, I mean, think about just how of a different place we are now with talking about the certification of the election. That's something that, in the past wasn't a huge part of the election. And here we are in 2024. And after 2020 and everything that happened, there are serious concerns about whether or not voters could be disenfranchised. But from Republicans, conservatives, they're having to address a lot of voter concerns about election integrity after everything that happened in 2020 and some of the falsehoods, too, that were spread around that election. I listened to Secretary of State Raffensperger. He was interviewed by the Washington Post yesterday, and he was talking about how, if if they're hand counting ballots really late into the night, there is this chance that misinformation, conspiracy theories could crop up. And so I think as we're barreling towards, November 5th, we're going to see litigation around these election laws. The judge in Georgia is going to be ruling on some of these rules this week. But in a state that we know is going to be incredibly close, that this election could really turn on, I think it's going to be pretty litigious too.
But isn't that what they want is to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the election, and not to mention that
Only if they lose.
Yeah, only if they lose, right? But I mean, you said thank God it doesn't look like their efforts have come to fruition, but it's only the first day.
No, it's
right?
only the first day.
Right? But
There's a lot. I mean, it's the certification, I think.
this
that
board has
really
been
matters.
infiltrated by MAGA supporters, which Donald Trump points out at his rally, saying, "Oh, this person's going to do this, and they're going to take care of this in Georgia." So I think the point is right to cast doubt on that and to make it harder. Obviously, these are voter suppression efforts. It may not be seen that way, but they're trying to get fewer people, most of them Democrats, to vote in Georgia.
And I think in terms of the litigation, what we're seeing between now and November 5th, this whole pre-election litigation period, is all laying the groundwork for the post-election litigation arguments. Mm-hmm. Remember, some of the Trump lawyers were instructed by judges in 2020. They didn't lay the predicate enough of this to then have the ability to make those arguments after the fact. So I think we're seeing a big increase in this litigation period now in advance. Pay attention to it because you're going to hear all the arguments. And by the way, if these polls are right and this election in 7 battleground states is as close as it is right now in the pre-election polling, we will see an exponential increase in the litigation, which is already off the charts, because it'll just come down to each one of these states. If they are actually this close, they will all end up in court.
Oh my gosh, you're giving me angina.
I want to just kind of give everybody a sense, since they are actually voting for the first time in Georgia today, about the money that these campaigns and their allies are spending on ads. So let me just show you the total ad spending. I mean, 164 million and change. Democrats and Republicans, Democrats are spending a little bit more than Republicans, but they're both spending a lot of money on ads in Georgia. And let's look at some of the issues. The Democratic presidential advertisers, taxation, character, healthcare, and then Medicare. Republicans, crime, taxation, LGBTQ rights, which I'm going to talk to you about in the next segment, and inflation. So that's kind of table setting for where things are. I want you to then listen to Bill Clinton, because he went to Georgia yesterday. And what he is trying to do in Georgia is what other Democrats and Republicans are trying to do in other swing states, which is go outside their sort of comfort zones and try to get as many new voters as they can, even in the case of Democrats, more rural areas.
We did it because, not just because we did well in Atlanta, but because where there was an opportunity anywhere outside Atlanta, we punched above our weight. So that's what this election coming down to. If you want it bad enough, you can win it.
I mean, it's just so fascinating to me that it's not just the money spent, it's not just the things that they're saying, it's where they're going and who their messengers are.
Totally. There's always been so much focus on the metro area around Atlanta, and to see Bill Clinton, the Harris campaign, outside in some of those rural areas. The Trump campaign has had bus tours. Trump has visited more rural parts of the state. But look, if you think about the numbers here, Donald Trump won Georgia in 2016 by 5 points. He lost it by 0.2 points in 2020. And Biden became the first Democrat to win the state since Bill Clinton, since 1992. And, for Harris to win, she is really going to have to not only win again Biden's coalition in the state, which is college-educated voters, but also Black voters and voters outside of the Atlanta area. And so that is something that Bill Clinton, with him being deployed as a surrogate, that's been a big focus.
And real quick, I want to actually show our viewers how big the Black vote is in Georgia. The white vote, 51.6%, Black almost 30%, which is among the biggest in the swing states.
And
when
that
we look
will
at
make the
importance
difference.
of that vote.
And I think the thing that shows that, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the
Everything.
skits about Bill Clinton going to make the jogging and then
Yeah.
jogging
He
into
went to McDonald's.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So he went to McDonald's, and there's a cashier, right? And I think with her manager, and she's like, and he's ordering, and the cashier goes, wait, you? But, oh my gosh. So I say that to say that black people love Bill Clinton. And I believe there's not a better retail politician, not even Barack Obama, that is as good as Bill Clinton. He's amazing. And if anybody other than Barack Obama can draw black folks in, I think it's Bill Clinton. Yeah. Do you disagree with that?
There's no doubt that Bill Clinton has an extraordinarily close political relationship with African American voters. It's been proven time and again. I don't disagree with that. Yeah. I think he's in advanced age. I don't know if his retail politicking is like quite as sharp as it was 30 years ago.